back. We're live. It's 2 o'clock rock here on a given Tuesday, and I'm doing Community Matters with Carroll Cox. Carroll Cox is a reporter, a journalist, an activist journalist. Can I say that, Carroll?
Yes, you can call me. I've been called worse.
And he's got a radio show on
KWAI 1080 AM.
Carroll Cox Show.
The Carroll Cox Show.
What time is it on?
9 a.m. to 11 a.m.
5 days a week?
1 day a week on Sundays.
Okay,
That's
Sundays.
too much of a task. You got to go out and get the work, the material to talk
Right.
about it.
That's the right ratio, actually.
Right.
Yeah. And you're kind of an investigative reporter because you come up with things that people don't know about and that they should know about. So welcome to the show, Carroll.
Thank
nice
you.
to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
We want to have you here on a regular basis. You know
Okay.
that. So anyway, we divided the show in 3 parts, and let's get right to it. Let's talk about the first part that comes to mind, and that's the PCBs that we found in the Maile area. What's going on?
Polychlorinated biphenyls, one of the most carcinogenic materials there are known to man. And we find them usually in utility poles, containers, or the transformers and what have you. And in this situation was the Voice of America, the old Voice of America site out in Maile. And the Coast Guard acquired the land, and I'm not going to go through the entire history, but the Coast Guard acquired the land from the Navy, and the Coast Guard decided not to use that land. Well, by then, earlier use had rendered it contaminated. And there's a debate of 89 to 95 acres. But what is absolutely for sure, there's currently 5 acres in a fenced area that is completely contaminated with levels exceeding the normal levels that we ever find.
How did it get there? I mean, in this one 5-acre parcel, how did it get there?
Well,
somebody was dumping it.
Well, yeah, because these PCBs, this oil, serves as a insulator or coolant for electrical units and what have you.
Yeah.
And so, just carelessness, recklessness, and disregard for the environment, and someone either dumped them or abandoned them, but many of them were contained in 55-gallon drums.
Oh, that's a lot.
So we have a marine environment right nearby, the salty air and what have you, so you got corrosion and you got kids playing around and what have you. So many explanations can be offered as to how it got there. The bigger question is, some argue that is it a formerly used defense site? I say it is, but the experts say it's not. But we know that the Navy was there, and we know that the Coast Guard, but they didn't have any real activity. But nonetheless, the PCBs are still present in the soil. Unfortunately, over the years, people had access to that. The general public traversed that area, motorcycle riding. And they did, in fact, put a fence up at one time to insulate the people from this.
So they shouldn't ride through it.
Yeah, and someone actually stole the fence.
Oh, no.
About a 5-acre chain link. So again, rendering this community to even a greater threat. So they did, in fact, put a new material fencing up in the last couple of years. But the problem is, it was a need to conceal it. You see, all it said was government property, do not enter. Well, you would think when you have something that hot, polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, you'd spell it out.
Or say it's dangerous anyway.
Dangerous,
Yeah.
keep away, didn't do that. So my interest became way back because I found maybe 100 barrels, 55-gallon drums about 2009 in that area. And I was concerned that the manner in which these barrels were treated rendered to be non-usable. And that's what you do when you have toxics. You don't want farmers coming along thinking they could be used for slop or water hauling. And so they cut them in a certain way to prevent any use, but they left the barrels there. So I developed an interest in that, and then from there start tracking and reading a historic.
You've been watching this for some time.
Oh, yes. And so actually, and you know, there are sometimes politics get in place its role in these things. And recently, I attempted to alert some of the neighbors whose houses are built abut that about.
This is a residential
brand
area.
new areas, sea country.
Oh.
If you step off your property and fall off the fence, you will possibly fall into the contaminated area. That disclosure, some of the people that own homes there have informed me that they were told this was all clear. So I guess they're considering legal actions or legal challenges. But one of the state representatives, I approached her, Tupola, and said, look, you know, I want to share this with you. And she conveyed to me, well, I've been told by the Navy's public relations person that there is nothing there and no problem. Well, in the meantime, I'm aware that there's $1,600,000 that's going to be spent. They couldn't find a program manager to manage it, so finally they did. And then now the Coast Guard has announced that it will be actually cleaning it up.
Did you tell her about the $1.6 million?
Oh yeah, but you know, this is a misinformation process. It should have been clear that these kinds of things you can't manufacture. But again, not knowing the severity, the significance of this, and the presence of this, and the dangers that they represent and present, and it's still open today, that area, and there's much more to be cleaned up.
So right now, what's the status?
Well, they're talking about the cleaning up and contracting with some company to clean it up, which will involve and entails scooping the dirt up, packing it, because it is hazardous, and having to ship off island at its levels. So that's what's going to take place next. $1,600,000, I don't know if that's going to be sufficient.
So this is the dirt to a certain depth all through that 5-acre contaminated parcel.
Yes, yes.
That's a lot of dirt.
Right. And also there are other things that were left in place. And how this worked real briefly, when the land was sitting, laying idle, Governor Linda Lingle acquired maybe 7 acres to build a transitional homeless shelter. And in turn, there's a trick about environmental work and when there's presence of contaminants and when the land is owned by the government. There's a practice of the federal government has a desire always to not clean it up in many cases. So they get the state or the city to acquire the land. Well, there's no real disclosure because they can take their time. But if you as a private entity purchase that land, they'd have to make declarations. They'd have to clean it and render it. You understand? So what we see is commonplace here in Hawaii. I have observed in many instances the shell game, where one agency knows it's contaminated and hands it off to another agency, and they then become the guard and the keeper of the gate and holding the public at bay, exposing them to the potentials of contamination.
Because they don't want to spend the money to fix it.
Don't want to spend the money, and some of these things can be politically hot potato.
They get embarrassed.
Get embarrassed for letting it lay so idle. So then the Department of Hawaiian Homeland has acquired some of the land, and there was some exchange with a portion of it to Molokai schools, and so what we still have though is that 5 acres, and most extensive and most extreme contaminants that of any site pretty much in the state of Hawaii.
So will the 1.6 or whatever it takes to remove, you know, the topsoil, if you will, the contaminated topsoil off this, solve the problem? Can I then let my children play in that?
Well, they would have to test it, remove it, scour it, grade it, and grub it, and put another covering over it and vegetation. I don't know the severity to the extent of it, but going backwards, they've actually had several studies, and that was the other problem. They engaged in studies. They get $500,000, $1 million.
It's a way to kick the can down the road.
Yeah, kick it around, but you hear the ka-ching, you see. You don't hear the can making the noise. You hear the money. So money has been allocated, and money was set aside, and they've spent money on sampling, testing, and all of those things, and clearing up some of it. So we've spent a lot of money, and at carrollcox.com, I have a whole list of information there, and pictures and photographs and the actual studies revealing what contaminants were found there, not in my interpretation, but the government's.
Why don't we just build a really super duper fence?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, fences are all the rage these days. If you listen to Donald Trump, fences are good neighbors. Yeah. Build a really super duper fence, a really hard fence to scale, hard to remove,
Right.
with a big sign that says this is really dangerous stuff, and leave it all there. Why don't we do that?
Well, it has impacts, environmental impacts, and primarily on humans, deformities, illnesses, cancers.
You mean you don't have to go on the 5 acres to have the impact?
No, because you see, it's an oil form. It's in the form of an oil. So it's in the plants on the dry weeds. So you know how often we have fires and, brush fires? And also the wind eddying. So you have a brush fire and the smoke is lifting the oil and products and dispersing them over. You have children playing and tracking at home, and when they get home, they take their clothes off, put them in the washer, wash it, contaminates the whole family. So it's critical that you remove all of that. And it's going to take a scouring, depending on, and we really don't know. And see, the sad part about this, we, the public, are always left, if we find out that they failed to clean it up and have let it just sit there, we still have to appeal to them. And then we have to rely on them to do full studies and cleaning. So we're in a catch-22 and we're in a bind. The public is always at a receiving end of a bad treatment and bad decisions.
It's interesting, so many people are so concerned about the environment, and yet we have these things that you find where the environment is being abused to an incredible degree, and the people around the environment are being abused to an incredible degree. What agency should be handling this? Who should be stepping up and saying, I'll take care of this, I'm going to fix this?
Well, let's be bloody honest about this. You have a military activity here. Militaries have machinery. They are required, they need to have fuels, and they need to have very different grades of fuel. If you're going to have a strong army and all of that. The problem comes is when you have those that say, we are good stewards of the land, and we're shepherds, and you can trust us to make sure. And case in point, Red Hill. Another point, there the many plumes and millions of gallons that I just uncovered about 6 months ago, 5 million gallons of oil, bunker fuel oil, at Pearl Harbor, just sitting on the ground there, of one old Tank 48.
Seeping into the ground.
That's already in the ground. And some of it is cold and chilled and gummy now, so it's not moving. But there was just one of 13 plumes. The IL laundry, TCEs,
It's another carcinogenic compound.
Laundry cleaning materials, so solvents. So there, and again now, there are others that go unquantified or unidentified. They know they're there, but they just don't have the money. So we're in a quandary that what we have when we talk about contaminants and environmental concerns that are presented by the military activities.
Good for you, Carroll. I want you to continue to do this, exposing it, having the people become aware of it, and maybe in that way something will get done quickly, and maybe systems will be developed to prevent it in the future. We're going to take a short break now. We're going to come back and talk about ocean safety with Carroll Cox.
Aloha, I'm Kaui Lucas, host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here on Think Tech Hawaii every Friday at 3 p.m. We address issues of importance for those of us who live here on the most isolated landmass on the planet. Please come join me Fridays at 3 p.m. Mahalo.
Aloha, welcome to Think Tech Hawaii. My name is Josh Green. I'm the host of a program called Healthcare in Hawaii. I'm a physician. I work in the emergency department on the Big Island. I also serve in the state senate, which, please don't hold that against me, doesn't detract from my television program. We speak about all the big healthcare issues in the state. We get together on Tuesdays from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we try to talk about the most important issues in healthcare. This is a terrific venue for people to learn about healthcare. There are many programs on this station. We broadcast it later, not just on the internet, but also on OC16. Thanks for joining us. Please be informed healthcare consumers.
Okay, we're back. We're live with Carroll Cox, investigative reporter. And for the second segment of our show, we're going to talk about ocean safety. Mayor Kurt Caldwell's representations about it, the Hawaii Community Development Association, and a boat, a very special boat. Tell us the story, Carroll.
Well, I'll start off by saying, we the people now in modern times are considered sheeple.
Sheeple.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I tried to figure that out, why? Why is it we're referred to, we're not saying nice things about sheep if we, the way well, sheeple is that we're generally going to get fleeced. You see, and that's the only commonality of the parallel. And in this case, there's a boat that recently arrived on island.
How big a boat?
A 21-foot Boston whaler.
Nice boat.
And yes, but to quote Mayor Caldwell, state-of-the-art boat.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you, I can find fishing boats that are more state-of-the-art than this. But that's not the problem. We can't, beat him about, chastise him for calling it, characterizing it as a state-of-the-art. But here's what happened. In 2014, August 28, in a press release issued by Tony Ching of the HCDA, Hawaii Community Development, there's this grand presentation that the Ocean Safety Division was receiving a boat that was donated by the HCDA that was going to provide, and its purpose was to provide safety and recovery and lifeguard platform for
Off Kaka'ako.
Kaka'ako.
Who's the Ocean Safety Division? Division of what? What organization is it part of?
Emergency Management, EMS, Emergency
okay.
Management, and the
that
director
state
is Mark
organization?
Rigg. It's a city organization
Okay.
under Mayor Caldwell.
Okay.
So they had this gathering, as politicians like to do, and tell us. But what they didn't tell us, see, Ward Villages, which is Howard Hughes Corporation,
Right nearby.
and they have acquired a lease for Kaka'ako, and a portion of it, and as well as the harbor itself, Kewalo Basin. So
Yes.
the public no longer have open access to that.
Ah.
So, what would be the purpose?
How did they acquire a lease of a place like that? Isn't that public property?
Well, you would think, and this is the fleecing. This is because the mayor is not serving voters or taxpayers or citizens or free people any longer. He's serving and leading sheep.
So what's supposed to happen there under this lease?
So this lease now is going to be a commercial activity. They're going to lease it to you, like me. We have these big yachts that we own, and
Sure.
so you'll have access.
Your yacht, my yacht.
Yes,
we got
and
yachts, yeah.
so they get to run a commercial harbor and rent it out and lease it out.
Like
to go with the
a
$37 million. Yes, a marina.
Okay.
Okay, so just took it from the hands, but you can only take it from the hands of the state with the help of city and state authorities. See, Howard Hughes has no power, but anyway, to comfort the people and to give them, to fleece them in a good way, the mayor attends this press release, and he represents, and the representation is, it's a state-of-the-art boat. HCDA has given us this boat, which means title and all. Well, I thought, let me just do some checking, and people had contacted me, and I went and found out that that was in 2014 of August 28th. The reality is, no boat has yet to be given or donated to the city, and won't. HCDA says, no, we might lease it to them. Well, now the city is paying $960 a month for a 30-foot slip that they're going to put this so-called rescue boat in.
But they don't have the boat.
Well, they don't own the boat, and the boat just arrived almost 2 years later.
Okay.
So now, who's going to man that boat? City lifeguards. So how many will be required? Now, I'm sharing these things. This is what the city answered in my questions that I posed to them. They're going to assign 3 men. Now, we already know we're strapped for men, and people are drowning at these outer areas. Mm-hmm. And so why would you take 3 men from your staff, your workforce, to put them on a boat to run a small area? When jet skis, and also speaking of jet skis, the press release also said that we will in fact, donate a jet ski hoist and a lift and a gangplank and a pier and a beautiful office. None of that exists. And the mayor is nowhere to be found. So to add insult to injury, I'm told, and I've written and asked the governor and other people, I'm told that there is a reef lake ceremony for this new boat now. are you going to participate in that? That would be insult to injury. We're already getting fleeced. I mean, there are many other things that are associated with this that prove to be untrue as they represented in 2014. But what's the purpose? To lull the public in thinking that the city was getting something, the taxpayer was getting something out of this humongous gift.
When the gift came from HCDA, but that's also the government, right?
Right, that's
how
the
did the boat get to HCDA? Did they go buy
Well,
this boat?
HCDA spent $120,000 to buy this boat.
That's
but-
not small change.
Now, HCDA, they were controlled anyway for many years. Why now? Why? The safety of the citizens should be primary concern immediately, all the ways.
Has the boat been engaged in the safety of the citizens up till now?
It's sitting, it's just arrived, and it's sitting in the park in the storage area,
I see.
you know, waiting, and it's posted some pictures at
So
carrollcox.com.
what's the solution?
The solution is, if we need lifeguards in Kaka'ako, as they say we need, then they should have done it long time ago, number one. The solution is, we don't need to take public resources, squander them, and get a few dollars on the surface, and then paying through our noses on the other end, and having our leaders represent that we're getting a good deal. No, we're getting fleeced to the extent that it's costly. And so $13,000 a year, and it's going into 2040, I think, 2047, this lease. So imagine that amount of money, and this is a public, if Howard Hughes is going to acquire land from and public resources, you would think they would waive the fee of charging or parking a
For the
boat.
boat slip, yeah.
You would think so, right? Because they're going to benefit too.
Benefit of the yacht harbor,
Yes,
of the
yes.
marina.
So that's a quagmire, and I think in due time the mayor will owe the public and will provide the public an answer. Right now he's still busy with his rail, so
Yes, he
boats and planes and trains. Well, no planes, but boats and boats and trains. It seemed to be his, you know.
So at the end of the day, what should happen here is the boat, however they fund the cost of the boat slip, should be out there deployed to save lives in the surf off Kaka'ako.
Well, what should have been done is that they should never have purchased a boat. Never. Jet skis is a state of the art because you can get in, it's shallow draft, you can get in the breakers, you can move in.
And lifeguards can use those
Lifeguards are
instead.
using them, and they're craving for them. And they have protocol how you can do CPR and all of that. 3 men on a boat, you got to go out and get this now. With a jet ski, this is the way they operate. A jet ski, you have a drowning victim, you rescue him or her, you head straight into the nearest lifeguard stand. You don't have to go grab him
To
at
a boat harbor.
Waikiki to a boat harbor. You understand?
Of course.
For a waiting ambulance, no, they are there at Queens Beach. They can run that
Far
baby
better.
right up
Now,
there.
are the lifeguards using jet skis now?
Yes, sir. It's a state of
So
the art.
there's no need for a boat.
No need.
Not in Kaka'ako or anywhere
Not
else.
anywhere, because
Why did they buy the boat in the first place then? It seems like
because
a waste
they
of money.
they were in the mode of making it look good because they knew they were going to be fleecing the public. You know, look as though they're giving something, but in fact, we really got it.
I don't understand either why HCDA buys the boat and then does a quote transfer or gift, you know, to the city.
But they didn't. See, that was and then for some reason they learned that they couldn't, but now they're saying, well, we might lease it to the city.
Whatever. Lease it. I mean, why does it move around between agencies like that? If HCDA bought the boat, they should have just, you know, arranged for its use themselves, not to give it to another agency.
Well, you can see
or
how,
lease it to another agency.
see how the public is being fleeced here, because HCDA buys the boat. They know it takes manpower to operate it. To take at least 3 people, one to steer it, one to rescue, one to assist.
Comes with
right?
obligations.
So they don't want that. And then when you got employees, you got to pay their salaries, you got to pay their training. You understand?
Sure, and
So
to say nothing of maintenance.
Well, we $160,000 a year to when you look at the salary and where are they going to get certified in training? The danger of this boat is why we don't need that kind of boat. And I have some expertise in operating patrol boats in California, off the coast of California. So I'm not just speaking and giving basic opinions. The last thing you want is a propeller-driven boat when you have jet propulsion that can steer you on top of coral and what have you, and you're not going to back over the
Propeller
victim.
is going to back off. That happened. We've had that.
Yes.
Right in that same area, there were people killed right right off Kaka'ako there, in that certain area between Kaka'ako and Ala Moana. There were people killed in there by boats, by the propellers of the boats.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful about. Jet ski doesn't do that.
Yeah, there are so many missteps here, and it speaks, though, completely to the fact that they have no concern, like in many other projects, or what it's going to cost the taxpayer, what's the real benefit here, who's going to benefit
I
from
think it was a mistake
big
to buy it in the first place.
It was a mistake. It is a mistake, and they bought dive suits. Now, let me just tell you, you don't want to wear scuba gear if you're a lifeguard, because lifeguards tend to be rescuing an individual that's in immediate danger. Taking the time to don a dive suit, you're recovering a person that's dead.
Right, just a few minutes and he's drowned.
You understand?
Yeah.
So just the overall leadership and the intent and what was done, it was a big lie was perpetrated on the public so that the mayor can boast that Howard Hughes and Ward villages were acquiring and helping and contributing. And if you read that press release and you read that battery of questions that I sent both HCDA and the city, you'll learn from that nothing is as they is spoken to the truth of and represented what they really said in their original presentation.
So when you send questions like this, just a journalistic matter, are you operating under the Freedom of Information Act, or it's just you as a journalist?
I'm a hybridization, I call it, a hybrid of many things. I'm a taxpayer, I'm a citizen, I'm a former investigator, special agent, I'm an environmentalist, and I just want good government. See, so when I write that question, it's up to them to dismiss it, because generally there are other ways to get those answers. You follow?
Yes, of course.
So if there's a both there, it would be simple. If they were to be inclined to hide it and not disclose who owned it, I would just go on state records and go to the computer and look who registered that boat, give the excess number, vessel registration number, and it would tell me who owned it. So they tend to answer the question.
Without legal process.
Yeah, but it's acquired through the Uniform Information Practices Act.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, Sunshine Act.
Sunshine
I
Act.
always file one of those, so the public should know
helps.
that anything, the government is not so insulated. We still can see, there's transparency, you just got to put on the right pair of glasses to look through.
And analyze the data you're getting.
Yeah.
That's Carroll Cox, a journalist who covers all kinds of interesting stories. Next, we're going to talk about something that he referred to on the fly a minute ago, rail.
Yeah.
Ooh, rail. We always love to talk about rail. The story we love to hate. We'll be back with rail and Carroll Cox.
Aloha, namaskar, and hello. My name is Anu Hittel, and I host a show, Climate Change Beyond Outrage. In it, we go beyond outrage to look at solutions to climate problems facing people, nations, and the world. Join me every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Hawaii Standard Time. See you then.
Hello, I'm Stephen Katz, and I'm the host of Shrink Wrap, which comes to you live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on thinktechhawaii.com, and then it's repeated again whenever you want if you go to the website. On our show, we will be talking to all different kinds of therapists, psychologists, psychoanalysts, psychiatrists, people who talk about the mind, the brain, and about different ways to find happiness. I myself am a marriage and family therapist in practice here in Hawaii, and I hope you will join us because I've got a lot to learn, you've got a lot to learn, and it's a great ride. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Okay, there it is, the Carroll Cox Show, KWAI 1080 on your radio dial, Sunday morning, 9 to 11 a.m. Wow, that's Carroll Cox. This is Carroll Cox right here. We got him. Anyway, Carroll, our discussion during the break, which is often really good, we gotta bring that forward into the show itself, is it's all about, you have identified and you continue to identify problems in our community, problems with good government and all that. How do we fix that? over time, it must occur to you that if we could do some magic sauce here, some sesame seed bun, whatever, that we could actually do better government. So you would be out of a job, Carroll. What do we have to do to get there?
Well, there are many aspects of managing this thing. First of all, if we vote the right people in and ride shotgun on them as if we would be a good rancher, and not to be disrespectful, but we must be there vigilant and reminding them that they work for us. It is a democracy. No matter what we may think and how it is hybridized and it's grown and morphed into something, we're still a democracy. Some say a republic, but I believe in a democracy, and it's the United States, these United States. We got standards, laws. That's the first start of it. When we find people that are acting outside of that purview, the legal aspect of it, or acting badly, we prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. We punish them and forbid them to return back to office. But we do that through the voting, in a democratic way. But
that means a public which is knowledgeable, a public which has the facts,
right,
which knows about these things.
And this is exactly what we're seeing playing out right now with the Ethics Commission. If you listen to my show, I quite often refer to them as being the agency that says it's ethics, but it has no ethics, you see. And I say that because on many, many occasions I've gone to the Ethics Commission, presented complaints myself, and I know from what's prima facie evidence is sufficient to speak to criminality, and they get washed. And whether it's a politician, whether it's a mayor or the former mayor or what have you. And so Tato lends himself. So I wasn't surprised at something of this nature, this development. But I am shocked when you look at the quality of people that is on the commission, then you have to ask, many of them are retired judges, very respectable people, but how do we get into this system and this dysfunctional behavior where we can't fully address city council people who are in violation? This recently redacted document that the Ethics Commission released, I have a copy of it. And in there, they're saying, well, you move forward to investigate these bad acting councilmen without sufficient evidence. And you move to punish him as a sort, but then we don't hear that other statement that we're going to refer this matter to the ODC, Office of Disciplinary Counsel, which is the Supreme Court. That's who you go to and file against the city councilman and all. We didn't see that. So we, the people here, are left holding the bag. It was filled with money at one time, but it just seems you look underneath, there's a puka here, a puka there, with the aid of our mayors, with the aid of our city council people. And here we are now with the rail.
Yeah, the rail.
And
The
that's
rail.
the problem.
So the rail, I must say that did you see Barreca's column?
I did.
That was very interesting, that column. He went to 3 or 4 people, all of whom were opposed to rail over time, and asked them what they thought that should be done now.
Yeah, and the rail from an environmental standpoint, this rail itself, just the inception of it, was on bad grounds. It was never clear as to what it was going to do. It was convoluted, it was served up, and then we saw our leaders engaging in trickery to move it forward.
What do you mean trickery?
When
if you mean that they were tricking the public,
tricking
I
the public, yeah, tricking the public, baiting and switching, all of those negative connotations, but where is it going to go and who was going to benefit from it? Now, I'm privy to information that initially, you remember the aquarium that was going to be built at Coalina? Imagine having a train leave the airport and being able to go straight to Coalina with the big shops and what have you. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Well, guess who presented that rail and really thrust it through? Mufi Hanneman in his administration, right?
I remember.
And so there's so much to be said about that, but the presentation of it, how it was served up, hook and crookery, lying and cheating, And I use that term freely because we see now it's costing about 6 point some billion when they said it would cost 3 billion plus, and going a longer distance.
Carroll, we're not finished.
Exactly.
It's going to be more than that by far.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, one thing, Neil Milner spoke at one of our programs one time, and he pointed out something that I think is very interesting, is that what happened here is that the execution of the plan, the execution of the project began before the public ever really bought into it. The public was never fully advised and never fully understood what it would cost, what it would do, how it would affect our lives, and they were caught short. And all of a sudden you look around and these great big concrete stanchions are permanent, may I say, concrete stanchions are being built, and the public still isn't settled down on this at all. And even now the public is not settled down. The public in general is not in favor.
Some of the saddest moments in this modern time that I witness is seeing this big monster being shoved down our throats and seeing an entire population in the city of Honolulu, close to 1 million people we have here. We have no voice. If that's un-American, you want to talk about being un-American? Welcome to the real world. We have been gypped out of everything, our rights, our transparency. They appointed people to head HART and sit on the HART board. What about their integrity? Why weren't they yelling that these things are mismanaged? We supposedly placed them there, nominated them because of their ability to manage. The Robert Bundes, where is he at? Why hasn't he chimed in and say, you know, this gentleman, Don Horner, has failed to be a good manager. Grabaskas has failed, right? This whole culture needs to change.
Are you saying it was the idea that was wrong in the first place? Are you saying that there was deception on the public? Or are you saying that this is a matter of management or mismanagement, and if we had good managers, it would not be a problem?
All of the above.
I knew you'd say that.
All of the above. And so, unfortunately, we don't even know the socioeconomical impacts on it because they present themselves later. Businesses shutting down. So is that part of the equation, the amount of money that it really costs? How many millions in perpetuity will it cost the family that invested? And those people are sitting now. They took their hard-earned money, borrowed money, and invested in their stores out there at IAEA and Pearl City. Who's going to speak for them? Are they part of the equation to when the total cost?
Yeah, let me ask you the same question Barreca asked his 3-4 people. I'm trying to remember who they were. Panos Preveduros was one. You know all these guys.
Cayetano,
Cliff Slater,
former
Cayetano, and it was one other, I can't remember right now. But they were all against rail all the way along. And his question, and no two of them answered it exactly the same way. His question was, what do we do now? So here at the close of our show, Carroll, what would you do now? Here we are in a pickle, a huge pickle, an expensive pickle. How do we get here? Nobody knows for sure. What would you do about it?
I would take that rail and I would change its whole purpose and its design and incorporate maglev or incorporate tires and buses, because that's the only thing that's going to, we're stuck with it, so to speak, and the cost. We're going to end up spending money. So the best thing, the bailout would be to step back and shop for things that would complement this monster and not feed it and make it grow, continue to grow with promises, but wheel on wheel or something, joining points or whatever.
It's interesting that the fourth guy that I just remembered was Scott Wilson. He was, last year anyway, the chair of the AIA Honolulu. And they asked him, or Barreca asked him, you know, what do you do now? And he said, well, don't build it, you know, elevated. Build it at grade. It's a lot friendlier at grade, and it will save at least $2 billion to put it at grade. And I think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is that you can't tear down those stanchions right away so fast. That'll cost a fortune. And you can't march out of a contract for $6 billion and change without getting a huge lawsuit. And there are people in the community that are dedicated to this project for their own largely economic reasons. They want to see it go ahead. And politically, it's as hot a football as we've ever had in my lifetime here, aside from TMT, I think, or the Super Ferry. but you know, the problem is, how do you, let's say that Scott Wilson or your maglev idea other ways to go. Hard to get everybody to agree without, governmental leadership, which I don't think we have much of on this subject. How do we develop political will to actually change the way the consensus seems to, suggest?
Wherever possible, we can delay moving forward and do a complete assessment, because there are hidden costs that we don't even know about. And so we might see it blossom to 10 billion.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to act now and put a kibosh to everything moving forward. Get rid of the HART group, get rid of the leaders, because they've led us down a bad path. That's okay. Stopping that, and then I don't know what the contracts allow for, but in order to stop the bleeding.
Stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
Why did Don Horner leave? I mean, I know there were demands made that he should leave. I forget who it was. One of the guys in that array of interviews that Barreca did wanted him to leave, together with Grabaskus. But why do you think Don Horner actually did leave?
Well, first I'd ask the question, why now is Ernie Martin and the mayor talking about he should leave?
Ernie Martin, that's who it was.
Why it was sudden now? Well, maybe there's an election coming. I don't know if that would be the real reason, but maybe there's an election and they're vying. And why would the mayor all of a sudden get religion to be? So it speaks that either he's a piss poor manager of monies in business. Remember, he was a managing director too, so he's been at the scene of the crime for a long time. He knows everything about this. So why don't we ask for his removal?
Who's this?
The mayor.
Oh, okay.
You see, if we're going to fix it, and that's in my closing statement, I would say, unless we get real and look at all aspects that's broken, to include the political aspects of it and the politicians, unless we do that, we're going to be victims for the next century.
So do you think that this mayoral election coming up now, soon, is that one of the big issues in that election is going to be rail?
Yeah. And poor management and fleecing of the public and setting us up for failure. We're being led to the slaughterhouse. We, the taxpayers, just being gathered up, and someone's ringing a bell, says, come on down the channel here, and we're being processed. We have no say in our government. GTE, the city council sit there and cry and whine and threats, but then they ultimately sign off on it. We have no control. This train is out of control.
Well, the press has a big role in trying to resolve this. We have to have an informed public, and that means informed in all the detail and all the value judgments. And so I'm really pleased to have you on the show as one of those investigative reporters that brings that to the public.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Carroll.
All right.
Aloha. Next time soon.
Aloha.
All right.